Hi there. To begin the new year, I put together this preview of the most anticipated TV shows coming in 2026. This is a bit subjective, of course, because I run a channel dedicated to the Game of Thrones franchise. But in theory, if you watch my channel, you're in the same taste clusters that I am. So the shows that I like are probably ones that also appeal to you guys as Game of Thrones fans yourselves. This past year, 2025, suffered from the rain shadow of the 23 Writers and Actors Guild combined strikes. That these were the biggest strikes in 40 years and the most impactful because the last time the Screen Actors Guild also went on strike, joining with the writers, was in 1980. So this is a seismic shift. It's why they actually won this one. Well, actually, I said the rain shadow. There were two waves to the rain shadow. This was the second one. Think back, remember the first half of 2024? How few shows there were? I've explained this, that the first wave were shows that paused filming rather than be unable to do live rewrites, live refinements, that you can't do this in advance, you need to do it then. Case in point, HBO's Penguin, because they filmed in the United States, said we are not going to do this without live rewrites. That was supposed to come out earlier, got pushed back all the way to late 2024. House of the Dragon films in Europe with the actors have European Actors Guilds, but the writers are registered with the WGA, so Zaslav forced them to film it without live rewrites, and you saw what happened, that there were pacing problems, but I thought it was still pretty good, but they would have made it better if they were able to do that. The live refinements are important. That's one of the things the strike was for, that up until then they weren't paid to do live rewrites, even though it's an essential part of the process. Those are things that paused filming. The second wave were things that weren't even written in the first place. Because think about it, it takes at least 2 years for a new show to go from green light to release. Because it takes a year to write and then a year to film. What was exactly 2 years before the second half of 2025? The prolonged Writers and Actors Guild strikes, which lasted from May to October of 23. So my point is, in the past 2 years, we've had maybe 1 year's worth of normal levels of content centered on the middle of that. Because at the start of 24, we lost half a year, and then at the end of 25, we mostly lost half a year. I mean, there were still a few good shows this past half of 2025, but there was hardly anything in summer, and maybe 2 or 3 good shows in the fall, relative to other times when the schedule's been stacked on 5 streamers at the same time, having big heavy hitters. So objectively, things have not been normal. But the rain shadow of the strike is finally over. The lingering effects were beyond the last wave of that. And my key point for this video is now, going into the new year, beyond that, the 2026 schedule looks stacked. It's a better slate of shows than we've had in at least 2 years. Core of this is I'm going to present them all chronologically. Then at the end, I'm going to group them by streaming platform to grade which streamers I feel are delivering the best content. Again, for what I consider the best content, for what I like. My interests as a Game of Thrones fan, and we like similar things. Now, how I'm structuring this is, in the age of streaming, season episode counts are shorter. That 8 episodes is now relatively standard. This isn't 20 years ago where you had 23 episode seasons. So there are physically more but smaller TV seasons within a given year. There isn't a, oh, it's coming in spring, it's a mid-season pickup anymore. That isn't a thing. With 8 episode seasons, it's more like one season is roughly 2 months each. So does that mean there's 6 seasons? Well, you'd think that, but I say there are 5 TV seasons in a given year now at the age of streaming. Because, as I've talked about in other videos, May to June is the dead zone after the late May Emmys cut off. when streamers don't put out major releases, or they put out TV movies or something. That also, they don't want it to air opposite NBA basketball finals in the United States, but you will never see something premiering in late May or early June. That's the end of the spring or start of the summer by the end of June. For example, notice how just this past year, The Last of Us Season two's finale was on Memorial Day, the last weekend of May in the United States. It's Memorial Day holiday. And then the summer shows didn't start up until the second half of June. So these 5 seasons, as I refer to them, are winter, January to February, spring, March, April, then the Dead Zone, then summer, which is late June to early August. Then there's actually 2 halves to fall, but I don't have unique names for them. So there's just early fall, which is late August through late October, and then late fall, which is November through December. And moreover, as I talked about in the last video, anything that premieres on Christmas just counts as early winter for me. Okay, that this is not I said Fallout isn't a 2025 show. It extended so much into 26. It's part of the early winter season because they're taking advantage of the holiday more people will watch. So that's how I structure that. Christmas counts as the next season. There's 5 seasons. And looking around, there's really nothing I watch on cable or broadcast anymore. With rare exception, I'll mention that AMC has something. AMC is not what it once was, that after Better Call Saul ended, it is, I don't know how long that as a platform is going to last because it's still tied to cable and they don't really have their own streaming platform. I mean, AMC Plus is a joke. There's still things on it, of course. But other things, like if something comes out on Adult Swim, I'll go, technically that's an HBO Max release, or like Fox Animation is technically HBO Max because that's where you could watch it if you have streaming content. That's just how I'm organizing everything. And 1 or 2 exceptions, I'll mention those. So going into this, I'm actually just rating 5 streaming platforms: Netflix, Amazon, Disney, HBO, Apple. There's nothing on Peacock, I'll tell you that in advance. Paramount, there's literally one thing I would watch, the Star Trek franchise, but I don't get Paramount because there's nothing else I want to watch. So unless there's some merger later on, I'm not knocking that there's a big Starfleet Academy new show coming out. I'll mention that, not the other stuff. Right now, they're the Taylor Sheridan channel, but actually, Peacock just hired Taylor Sheridan for this big new contract. It's, coming in a few years, but with the mergers and contracts, we'll see where everything goes in the future. Right now, we're focused on 2026. Or like in my list of the top things from 2025, I mentioned PBS had this amazing Ken Burns American Revolution miniseries. It was a really big documentary event. But letting you know now, there's nothing on that scale like a PBS documentary that I know of that is coming in 2026, so we don't have to worry about that. Also, you'll notice that I don't count Hulu separately from Disney Plus because Disney's basically absorbed Hulu by this point. They kept the brand name as a hub for this is our adult content like Alien Earth or The Handmaid's Tale that children shouldn't be watching. It's probably a smart move to do that. But I will note, this show is coming on Disney Hulu, but when I list them and grade the streamers, I count Hulu as just part of Disney Plus. So after all that setup, what's coming in 2026? Starting with winter, January and February. Well, like I said, technically what I thought signaled the start of this season was when Fallout 2 came out on December 17th. And they are giving it an episodic release now. They binged the first season because it had a slow burn. They were worried people would stop watching. Season 2, it's coming out weekly. It's still coming out in January. That's a current winter show. That's the first one. Well, other things of note, I don't watch The Pitt, that medical drama on HBO, but I recognize a lot of people do, and it really swept the Emmy Awards last season. So, okay, The Pitt is coming out January 8th. It helps build up HBO momentum for when Night of the Seven Kingdoms comes out. January 11th, Genndy Tartakovsky's Primeval Season 3 is actually coming out on Adult Swim. We were not expecting that. It's light on story. It's more of a visual thing. Originally, it wasn't in this list, and someone said, no, put it in there. It's still noteworthy, and there isn't as much on Adult Swim now as there used to be, so I'll take any hit I can for them. Okay, that's the big Adult Swim thing. But in terms of TV shows, the next big thing that the sci-fi fantasy crowd would really be talking about on YouTube is Star Trek, of course. This is the one Paramount thing I listed here. January 15th, Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Advanced reviews I've seen of it actually said it was pretty good, or that at least it isn't Discovery. That if you didn't like last seasons of Discovery, it's actually not that similar, or enough that it's its own thing. You could just dive into this without watching the later seasons of Discovery. Good, fine, I'm interested. I'm happy they got Robert Picardo back as the Holodoctor, and we have seen indications there's a lot of Easter eggs and references to all of the prior shows like Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. They have references in there, so it is keeping track of their legacy. We'll complain about it as we always do as Star Trek fans, but in general, I'm relatively optimistic for it. I'm just not covering it or watching it because I don't get Paramount. It's not worth getting as a platform for how little I get out of it. But I imagine the other big sci-fi fantasy channels will be talking about it, so I'm putting it on the list here. The big thing for us, of course, is January 18th, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the second big Game of Thrones spin-off series. Well, it's relatively short. It's a half-hour series, only 6 episodes. It's about 3 hours and change of content, but it's one of Martin's best stories. It's some of the best writing he's ever done, even though it's relatively small scale. It's just this one tournament, but it's really good. Ask anyone who read it. Chronologically, then, we have January 27th, Wonder Man, Marvel's Wonder Man on Disney+. That's been delayed a couple of times. I don't know if that's going to be any good. January 29th, Bridgerton is actually... Netflix is slowly admitting the binge format doesn't work, so they've been releasing things in that volume format of part 1, 2, or 3, like with Stranger Things the past few seasons. So Bridgerton Season 4 is coming in 2 halves. That Volume 1 is on January 29th, Volume 2 is on February 26th, both within winter. Oh, another thing is then on February 4th, there's supposed to be a Muppets 50th anniversary special on Disney, which might be a backdoor pilot into a revival. They have to keep trying to revive that because, dude, it's the Muppets. Everyone loves it. I mean, if they do a good job. But I'm asking for a good Muppets show again. Why can't we have that? Or something set in that. Another exception after that is February 14th, Valentine's Day, Dark Winds Season 4. On AMC, endorsed by George R. R. Martin. He's one of the producers on it. That's just a money thing, that it's this novel series, novelist he really liked who's passed away, but with everyone, with his widow and everything, they're adapting it as it's this Native American police officer in the American Southwest in the 1970s. It's really good, just if you like police shows and with the cultural stuff. So Dark Winds is like one of the few good things still on AMC, and I feel bad for them that I don't know if AMC is going to be here in 5 years, but Dark Winds is worth watching. Another thing, I put this on the back, but I know other people really like it. I consider this noteworthy. February 19th, Netflix's The Night Agent comes back for Season 3. And this is weird. It's actually one of their most watched shows. Because I like the analogy I've heard of a badly made steak versus a well-made hamburger. If this is a store-bought, really good $20 hamburger that you got as a meal at a sit-down restaurant versus some really cheap, bad steak, that it's not going to blow anyone away in its originality, but the hamburger is really well done. That this is a spy thriller action show, but it's just really, really well made. One of the directors from that's coming to House of the Dragon in Season 3, Nina Lopez Corrado. And they've got the guy who played Inaros on The Expanse is this Iranian agent on it. It's just a really well-made, well-directed thing, and I found it enjoyable. And I realize that's probably what's happening, that it's never listed as anyone's number one Netflix show by critics. But it's consistently everyone's number 2 or 3 show. It's like picking pizza toppings, that no one person can agree on their number 1, but everyone can kind of agree on their second ranked one. That because Netflix is so diverse. Everyone has their own top favorite show. But most people end up, in the suggested videos feed, they end up trying out Night Agent because it's a decent show. So it's not any one person's favorite, but it has wide appeal as comfort viewing. So it ended up being a very widely watched show, and it's got pretty good viewership numbers. Just as, well, here's the second thing to watch after the main show. So it's, or the lead-in band at a concert or something. So, okay, Night Agent is coming in February 19th. This is a big show for Netflix. They do have a strong winter set with Bridgerton with Night Agent. I will mention that on Fox, the Sunday animation lineup is starting up again. Obviously, I'm not really watching Simpsons or anything, but I watch the parody stuff for Family Guy and American Dad. They talk about a lot of sci-fi things. That the big notable thing here is that American Dad is coming back to Fox after a decade away because it did so well on TBS. And I like American Dad more. I mean, Patrick Stewart is a major character on it, but just I like that the explanation that Family Guy, the humor is in cutaways that aren't part of the story. In American Dad, because he's a CIA agent dealing with aliens and stuff, it is literally part of their lived lives, of their story. The sci-fi madness is part of the story. And the TBS seasons got really good in just terms of the complexity of the writing and everything. So I just have fun putting American Dad, play all of the whole season on the background on Hulu or something, and there you are. So good for them that they managed to succeed so much Fox is noticing them again. February 27th, Season 2 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters on Apple. I'm not going to see that right away because I don't get Apple right now. I just get it once 1 month into the year. Anna Sawai was one of the main female characters on it. It was her first role before she broke into the mainstream with her big role in Shogun Season 1. And now it's suddenly, here's Emmy-winning Sawai on the Godzilla show. Now I watched these because I'm a Godzilla fan. And Season 1 was surprisingly better than I thought it would be. I actually like Monarch Season 1 better than the last Godzilla movie because it had more story to it. But it's interesting and I like it, so I'll check that out eventually. I don't think people are going to be doing live streams of it, but there you go. Then, like I said, Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 comes out February 26th. Then we have Spring 2026, which is even stronger than the winter season. By the way, by this point, I stop having exact dates, and I can just give you the vague order of everything. A few dates to start with. That March 4th, Daredevil Born Again, Season 2. This was one of the big points of the Marvel behind-the-scenes reforms for their TV shows after they crashed in 23. They said, you need to have multi-season shows so they can build to a climax over time, in terms of the characters, the complexity of the writing, the story arcs. After Loki Season 2, of course, that was an exception, but this is the first time they're having, because it was, like time travel, that you're going in, then coming out of the midpoint. This is really their first attempt at having a long-running, more than 2 seasons show. I think there'll be a Season 3. So, Season 1 was critically praised, but didn't have high viewership. Will Season 2 be able to build to that crescendo? From the foundation of Season 1, build on it in Season 2? I like to hope so. They have a good cast. So that is a pretty decent... It's not a nothing, this is Wonder Man. For all I know, Wonder Man might be a hidden gem. Might be bad, that's why they pushed it off. Daredevil is worth mentioning. It's not like Disney has nothing in the spring. 1 week after that, the big thing, though, coming on Netflix, March 10th, One Piece live-action series, Season 2. Season 1 was a surprise hit. Global mega hit. There are multiple global revolutions by Gen Z taking the world by storm across the maritime sea lanes and the Indian Ocean and stuff, spreading global revolutions and waving the One Piece flag. Now, I simply never got into One Piece, the anime. I watch anime, it's just I wasn't into that. I was watching like cyberpunk things and robot things, so I just wasn't into it. Doesn't mean I don't I'm not saying it's bad, it just wasn't for me. I have barely even tried it, so I'm aware of it. I also never really got into Dragon Ball. I liked other stuff, but, like Gundam is interesting. But point is, it's hard to get a good anime adaptation. Like, Netflix tried and failed hard to get a live-action Cowboy Bebop. wasn't good at all, didn't really capture the essence of it. Their live action Avatar The Last Airbender, I didn't include on my list here, but they're coming back for season 2. It's pleasant, it's just good enough that it's not embarrassing itself. And because, there's a whole thing about, representation, that there aren't many shows that have a main cast of all Asian actors. In terms of representation of these actors finding work, good for them. It's just being a huge fan of the main thing. I think it was really meant to be animated, but it's not a mega flop, it's not a mega hit, it's just kind of there, enjoy it if you want. One Piece, on the other hand, turned into a global phenomenon. It already was as a cartoon, but the live action on top of that was surprisingly good by all accounts. From all the reviews I see, I haven't really watched it myself, but just looking at the viewership numbers and everything, this thing is huge. So expect season 2 to be huge. And once again, Netflix starts the year very strong. But then we have one of the biggest releases of the year, April 8th. Amazon's The Boys, 5th and final season. I was a little surprised that they pushed it to spring. It's normally a summer release. Why did they do that? I suspect it was due to Emmy politics. Remember, the cutoff is in late May. I think they want to compete in this Emmy cycle. And that's good because it means they're not competing against House of the Dragon, which in summer wouldn't be up against them, so that's fine. Not stepping on each other's toes. Just, okay, they want it to be in this Emmy cycle. From this point onward, I have no specific premiere dates for anything, but also coming in spring will be Euphoria Season 3, which is a glorious train wreck you just can't look away from. And it's weird to me when people take it seriously. It's like a soap opera cranked up to 11. The cinematography is gorgeous. The acting, don't get me wrong, the acting is amazing. Zendaya deserved the awards for that. It's just the story is so bonkers. And it's not even trying to be realistic, so it's not even a complaint. And they didn't know if there would be a season 3. So even if it's bad, people will be talking about it, given how much hype there was from the first 2 seasons. Just how huge they were. People will be talking about that, tuning in, no matter what. So that'll be a TV event. Other things. From Disney Hulu being part of Disney, we're getting a spin-off of The Handmaid's Tale called The Testaments, because Margaret Atwood actually made a sequel book. And I actually think that's a bit more interesting than just A Handmaid's Tale Season 6, because it overstayed its welcome by 1 or 2 more seasons than it really needed. But what is a different story to tell? Well, there's a time skip of about 15 years later, so the little children of the main character in Handmaid's Tale are now teenagers, and it's examining, what is the thematic point? Children who grew up in an autocracy, or basically a cult. Like when you watch documentaries on like cults and things of this is all I have ever known, is the indoctrination. And just, you saw a bit of that with actually Sydney Sweeney played a character in an earlier season who was younger and didn't really remember before the revolution that clearly. Now you're dealing with flat out, they were born after the revolution, they don't remember the world before that. I don't know if we'd still be interested in a second season of this, but in at least the first season of it, this is a new take on that, a new angle of, like, what if you're really in an autocracy for a long time and you've internalized it? So there's a new aspect to examine there. I don't think it'll be the biggest show of the spring by far, but it's worth mentioning because it's new. Then, of course, we have Invincible Season 4, which, as I said in the last video, is a mega hit, particularly for the YouTube crowd. This has been a consistent favorite since a lot of the YouTube live reactors really started up a big wave during pandemic lockdown. This was one of the big hits then in 2021. Big surprise that there's this thing Invincible. You gotta watch it. It's insane. And the quality is amazing. Now, I don't know if they can keep up with the Invincible War and all that. Season 3 of Invincible was a masterpiece. But drawing on a finished comic, they have storylines. This is some of the best work he's done there. I think that's probably going to be a mega hit, even if it's 90% of season 3, it'll still be an amazing show, Just set the bar really high for themselves. So, and I was saying, look at how stacked this year is. Winter was great. Spring, you've got Daredevil, which is hardcore Marvel. One Piece, The Boys final season, Euphoria, Invincible season 4. This is huge. Plus other things like Testaments, and just to round out my list here, I put this at the end. We're not really sure when this is coming out. Netflix is making a really high-profile new adaptation of Pride and Prejudice as a miniseries. Normally I wouldn't list this, but it's got A-list actors. It's got Emma Corrin and Olivia Colman. So keep an eye out for that during award season is what I'm saying. This is actually a huge year for 19th century English literature. On the movie front, there's going to be a Wuthering Heights movie starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. And then there's going to be a different film adaptation of Sense and Sensibility. So the Jane Austen stuff, the Bronte sisters, just 3 major projects in the same year. I mean, they're perennial hits, but on the TV front, there's going to be a Pride and Prejudice miniseries with really A-list actors. Last year, and this might come in summer, either of these, but last year, another exception because it's AMC, Interview with the Vampire Season 3. Well, there's a modern-day time skip, so it skips to the modern day. It's renamed The Vampire Lestat. It's almost a soft reboot of itself. Stars Game of Thrones veteran Jacob Anderson, and I tried a few episodes at the beginning. It is a really well-made show, just in terms of the period costuming and design and the camera work, the acting, very high quality. Just I'm more into fantasy world building and stuff, and it's more of a character piece, but it has a very intense fandom that love it because it's so well made. And really the thing that hit me was when I went to New York Comic Con, just how prominently and disproportionately it was being displayed there's huge banners around the convention, the huge panels, big panels, main stage celebrating it. So if you're into it, you're really into it. Like I said, for Glitch Productions, also, like, it's not as big as like Netflix's The Night Agent, but it's got a disproportionately devoted fandom. So that's noteworthy, though, just like I didn't watch Stranger Things. I'm not really into Interview with the Vampire. But fair enough. That might be coming in summer. The one weird thing I have to note here, moving on to summer, is unlike spring and fall, there's stuff in fall, there's a lot of stuff in fall. There's hardly anything in summer that we currently know of. That I thought the big thing would be The Boys. And maybe like how the end of 25 was a combination of the strike and who would want to put out a show at the same time Stranger Things is having its big 5th final season, maybe other shows went, why would we put Star Wars shows out at the same time as a giant The Boys 5th and final season? Only for The Boys to then shift to spring, you know? So maybe that's why other things didn't plan to put out that much during the summer. The only big release we know of is, of course, House of the Dragon Season 3 on HBO Max. Part of me wonders if it's because, no, people are so confident in House of the Dragon that it was the boys that didn't want to be in the shadow of House of the Dragon and stuff, that people are avoiding competing with House of the Dragon. I don't know, but there have been years where we had like a major fantasy show release and Star Wars during the summer, that there really wasn't anything this past summer or this summer, and part of it is, well, like I said, the Emmy cycle climaxes in spring. But there's like superhero shows. The Boys was always a summer show, and it wasn't trying to do that. It's weird how there's so few things we know about in summer right now. But that is subject to change. Anything after spring that I'm going to talk about here, we do have the hope that there will be more announcements in the future, that the closer we get, the farther out we get, the more we'll know. So this is just what I know about summer and fall right now. I'm hoping to hear about more things. So far, at least, the only other thing I have heard about that appeals to us, that isn't like some Apple drama that really isn't sci-fi or fantasy and really fueling online fandom, the only other big fandom release that I've heard of for summer is X-Men 96 Season 2. On Disney+. And they shifted showrunners, who knows what's going to come, but they have a big team overall, they're pretty good, so that's also coming, and I don't think there's a lot of overlap between the two. I mean, one is a half-hour animated superhero project, the other is a live-action medieval fantasy. And they might even be coming out at different times in the summer. So I don't think that's competition for House of the Dragon. It's no, that the rising tide lifts all boats, that people will come on to look for X-Men 96 videos, then hop over to House of the Dragon videos. That there is enough overlap. We're both interested without competing, I think. And maybe like Pride and Prejudice or Interview with the Vampire might be pushed to summer, we don't know. Otherwise, I don't really know what's coming in summer. Other years, Rick and Morty was in summer. It's not this year. It got delayed to fall. Which, of course, brings me to, like I said, there's 2 fall seasons. This is early fall. Closer to early fall. What we've heard is that Star Wars Ahsoka Season 2 will be coming August 22nd. That one we actually do have a date for. And again, the last weekend in August counts as early fall. That is on the short list to be one of the shows of the year. Season 1 was a mega hit. The biggest post-pandemic Star Wars show. The direct lead-out from The Mandalorian, direct spin-off. Established characters, generally well-received. It had Grand Admiral Thrawn in it, a man I would follow to the gates of hell and back. Thrawn. He made us proud to wear that uniform. But anyway, we're going to have... Disney's relatively quiet. Well, they have Daredevil, but starting in summer, they have, well, on the movie front, this is mostly TV, on the movie front, they're going to have Mandalorian and Grogu launching for Star Wars fandom, discussing things from it, and the lead out from that will be Ahsoka Season 2, the TV show coming early fall. And another animated show that apparently I'm not really excited for it yet, but Maul Shadow Lord will be the animated show that's a sequel to Bad Batch, or a spin-off of Bad Batch, also coming in fall. I know we needed to pause after Andor Season 2, but we haven't really had Star Wars content since then, and it won't start up again until this coming summer, but when it does, it's a lot to look forward to. Also, on the DC Comics front, we will be getting Lanterns, the Green Lantern show at HBO Max, which is getting decent anticipation for it. I'm not going to go over the movies too much, but 2 live-action movies a year for both Marvel and DC. That Marvel is going to have Spider-Man Brand New Day in the summer, and then at Christmas have Avengers Doomsday, which I'm looking forward to. It'll usher in this whole new phase of the cinematic universe that they're going to actually be announcing other things. DC Comics has Rhaenyra as Supergirl in the Supergirl movie coming in June, and then a Clayface horror movie coming around Halloween time. So we're going to have a summer with Supergirl and Spider-Man movies. Star Wars is getting like the 12th theatrical movie now. Big projects on that end. Also, as I said, Rick and Morty Season 9, which I think the quality is actually still pretty good, got pushed back to fall. Or I put it on as light entertainment. It just keeps me amused while I'm working on other things. Last summer was pretty good. Other things, probably early fall, might be late fall, we don't really know. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 3. I honestly felt Season 2 was better than Season 1. And while people are knocking on it and it is overpriced, Wheel of Time started out not great by their own admission. By Season 3, by their 3rd season, they had grown into, wow, this has actually turned into their first really great season. Also at Amazon. So can't we at least extend Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power the same courtesy we gave to Wheel of Time, that maybe by their 3rd season, it'll turn from good to outright great? Due to time shifts, changing the story structure. If nothing else, as a Tolkien fan, I enjoy watching. It's presentable to me. And I go, oh, they're playing around with that lore thing. I like it about as much as I like a well-written video game set in Lord of the Rings. So I'm interested in playing around. The Lord of the Rings channels are having fun discussing points from it. Season 2 is better received. I wouldn't, in my list here, it is not bolded as one of the shows of the year. Don't get me wrong. This is like Handmaid's Tale spin-off the Testaments level in terms of my excitement of, I might check it out. Show of the fall is going to be Star Wars Ahsoka, no contest. I mean, technically, Netflix is also putting out The Witcher Season 5 in fall, but that is also, I'm noting it. That doesn't mean I think people are following it. On the animation front, that Amazon is really supporting animation, Hazbin Hotel, which is the most in-demand animated project in the world officially by viewership. Hazbin Hotel Season 3 will be back in the fall. Then also, I kind of hope by Halloween we get Haunted Hotel Season 2. Maybe that, because it's animation, will come later. I really liked Season 1. It was a surprise hit for me on Netflix, just as a comedy. Then, more likely late fall of 26, we get the real heavy hitters, though, that early fall will be dominated by Ahsoka. Honorable mention to Lanterns. Late fall, Neuromancer. Live action Neuromancer on Apple TV. Well, we're not really sure. It might even be early fall, but like I said, there's not much I really watch on Apple until Neuromancer. If they do that right, wow, that'll be huge. Then also Disney Plus has probably their biggest show of the year, bigger than Daredevil, Vision Quest. The third show in a trilogy from WandaVision. Agatha was also good in WandaVision, which basically launched their entire TV arm of the cinematic universe. And I want them to fix what happened in Doctor Strange 2. That was awful, but Vision Quest is a very anticipated, beloved character. Then, over on Disney's Hulu, Buffy the Vampire Slayer New Sunnydale. It's not a reboot, it's not a sequel as such, they said it's more of a continuation, but Sarah Michelle Gellar's back, there's a new Slayer back. Even if it isn't great, at least the first season will generate a lot of focus and analysis, is what I'm saying, because it was this really huge fandom. That when you have a big franchise like that coming back, at least the first season will get a lot of discussion, attention. I hope it turns into something. Then you have Dune Prophecy Season 2, which was a surprise hit on HBO Max last year. They've given it more episodes, as 8 episodes now. Maybe the quality won't stay as high. The story was enough to keep me interested. The A plot was really good, the B plots were serviceable. That if you go, well, I didn't like that other thing with the Great Houses, that was a B plot. I mean, the focus on the Harkonnen sisters in the Bene Gesserit, because they hired good actors, was really good. And they were playing around with concepts from the book that they didn't have time to show in the movies, like other memory or the Tleilaxu, that they rounded out a bit more, like explaining, why don't we have computers? Well, there was an AI war, we barely survived. That was interesting. I don't know if it'll be as interesting in season 2, but I'm still going to be following it because I really like the Dune universe. I read all the Dune Chronicles when I was in junior high. We had a very well-stocked junior high library. Just I stumbled on them one day. Here's all the Dune Chronicles. But that's more it'll be very popular among the sci-fi fantasy fans, but in terms of mainstream fans, those are 3 mega hits. Neuromancer, Vision Quest, a Buffy return are going to be huge in late fall. And allegedly Netflix will be putting out Benioff and Weiss's 3 Body Problem adaptation, Season 2. They said they filmed Seasons 2 and 3 back to back, and it's like the elephant in the room they're dancing around is that Season 1 was not a breakout hit. And I wouldn't expect it to be, because if you're familiar with the novels, the first book is basically set up. They themselves acknowledge that the really exciting stuff is when they skip to the future, centuries later through cryogenics, and it's the space fleets and things in Season 2. So even I would say that Season 1 not doing great. It did serviceably, presentably, but this was supposed to be like the next Game of Thrones, and it wasn't. It wasn't the next Stranger Things level hit. We'll have to see how Seasons 2 and 3 do before we really describe it as a success or failure. Then what? And will they be able to keep people interested 3 years after the first season? 3 or 4 years later? I don't know. And again, the second and third season are very separate from the first season. They freeze people so they awake in the future centuries later. I don't know. I wouldn't list it as one of their giant things, and that's why I'm worried about Netflix throughout the year. I mean, there's other things that could be a hit. I mean, there's like a Little House on the Prairie. I read those as a kid. The Little House on the Prairie books, if they do it well, could end up being a surprise hit in the summer. Not that it would appeal to the sci-fi fantasy crowd, but I don't know what mainstream audiences are watching more than, Star Wars, Marvel things. Honorable mentions. not on the major streamers, or even I listed one or two things from AMC and one thing from Paramount. Other than that, everything here is on the 5 major streaming platforms. I will give honorable mention to the top anime coming out on Crunchyroll this year. And there's always surprise hits and you never know, but Crunchyroll, the most anticipated shows are Frieren Beyond Journey's End Season 2, which is coming right now in January. Delicious in Dungeon Season 2, which will be coming in the fall. And Apothecary Diaries Season 3, which is in October. That's like a historical drama I really want to see. I just haven't time. I don't have Crunchyroll. So, Frieren, Delicious in Dungeon, Apothecary Diaries. We're waiting for the next Attack on Titan, of course, but these look like solid entries. Just honorable mention to the anime that's coming. What do I think will be the top shows within each of these 5 micro seasons? In summary, like I said, skewing towards what Game of Thrones fans think. Obviously, I think the top shows of winter season will be Fallout 2 and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Will one be bigger than the other? Can't we have both? I don't know. Spring. Euphoria has very widespread appeal, so by numbers it might be bigger, and One Piece is also a giant fandom, as is Invincible. It's really an embarrassment of riches in spring, though I think probably the one that'll edge them all out is The Boys, because a final season is always hyped up as a really huge climax and exciting. But there's a lot of stuff coming in spring. I just think arguably The Boys will be the top one of that micro season. Summer, House of the Dragon Season 3, easy because there really isn't anything else big coming out in summer other than X-Men. Early fall, biggest show everyone's going to be talking about is probably Ahsoka Season 2. Late fall, heavy competition between Vision Quest, between Buffy, Neuromancer. I think maybe Neuromancer, if they do it right, will be huge. And people like Vision Quest. What if Buffy really is worthy of it? If it's done well, if Vision Quest lives up to WandaVision, if a Buffy reboot lives up to itself, if Neuromancer lives up to the book, those are like the top 3 in consideration right then for what I think most of us are going to be talking about. Well, not me, I'm focused on Game of Thrones all the time. I don't have time to cover other stuff, but that's pretty much what's going to be the top in each micro season. Now, let's sort these top shows by streaming platform. Which platform appears to have the strongest slate of shows coming in 2026? The big thing I'm judging them on isn't comparing the relative size of one big show to another. That anything on the list I already gave counts as a big show. I mean, yeah, arguably Ahsoka is going to be better than Daredevil in spring in terms of a bigger show, but what I'm grading them on is consistency here. Which of these consistently has a solid schedule across the year with an eye towards that you should actually renew your subscription annually instead of just dropping it after your favorite show ends? Like that. Out of all of these, like I said, there were exceptions, and to start with, I'm not including Apple. Because, luck of the draw, Apple's next show I'm actually interested in is Neuromancer in the fall. It doesn't really have anything before that. That's the one show I'm really interested in, so that I'm not even making a list for that. So we're focusing on the big 4. Disney, HBO Max, Netflix, Amazon. Disney Plus. Winter, Wonder Man, plus technically the Fox Sunday Animations. Spring, Daredevil Season 2, and The Testaments. Summer, X-Men 97, which is a mega hit. Plus, not that I'm including movies in this, there's a new Star Wars movie coming out, which will get people interested in that. Then early fall, Ahsoka Season 2, probably on the short list for Show of the Year already, top 5. Late fall, Vision Quest and a Buffy reboot. So, grade A. Across the 5 micro seasons, they have at least something every micro season. I don't know if Wonder Man will be that good, but moving on, at least it's something. That Disney Plus starts the year a little weak, but then gets very strong as it goes on. HBO Max. Winter, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Spring, Euphoria. Summer, House of the Dragon Season 3. Early fall, decently anticipated Green Lanterns show, as well as Rick and Morty. And late fall, Dune Prophecy Season 2. HBO Max also consistently has at least one interesting show every micro season, grade A. Amazon Prime. At the moment, I'm going to give it a B or a B+, but that's subject to change because I simply don't know that much about what they're coming out with in fall. What we know now is they have mega hit Fallout Season 2 in the winter season. Then in spring, The Boys Season 5 and Invincible Season 4. Summer, I have no idea what they're doing. Then in fall, we have Lord of the Rings Rings of Power Season 3, which is enough I'm interested in watching, and Hazbin Hotel Season 3 on the animation front, which in terms of the fandom is huge. When you go to Comic-Con, just everyone's dressed up as Hazbin Hotel stuff too, or Glitch stuff. But if Lord of the Rings is early fall, Hazbin's late fall, or the other way around, I'm not sure if Blade Runner 2029 is coming out in summer or fall, in which case they'll have a stacked fall but a weak summer. And even then, Blade Runner 2029 has been repeatedly delayed, and it has a big cast. It's got Euphoria's Hunter Schafer, it's got Michelle Yeoh, and if it lives up to, I doubted Blade Runner 2049, the movie, and then within 5 minutes it proved itself to me in the first fight scene with Denis Villeneuve. So my hope is the TV show will prove itself to me in the first 10 minutes, just like that movie did. Maybe it won't be that good. We don't know. We haven't seen anything from it. It's been repeatedly delayed, and maybe the delays benefited it. Same thing happened to Dune Prophecy, where we thought, it's delayed so much, it must be bad. But no, it benefited from those delays. So let's go with B+ for now in terms of outlook, because Blade Runner 2029, I don't know if it's coming in summer, in which case it would have consistently something every micro season. They might be announcing more things, so this is subject to change. Netflix is ranked 4th for me. Grade B- or C+. Subject to change when we know more. Because they, like I said, they start strong. That winter has Night Agent Season 3 and Bridgerton. Spring has One Piece Season 2, which is a mega hit. But then what do they have? After the Emmy cutoff, well, they do have a Pride and Prejudice limited series that's got an all-star cast. They really have been spending a lot of resources on that Little House on the Prairie thing, which might be good, and if they do it right, it's a classic book. But what other franchises are we looking forward to? I mean, The Witcher Season 5. 3 Body Problem. The only thing I'm looking forward to is Haunted Hotel Season 2 if it comes back this year, because I just really like the first season. That's animation. That's a whole other different thing. And the complaint this brings up is Netflixification. That whole idea that Netflix is so geared towards many moderately good shows that the algorithm can then target to people who really like that microgenre. But fewer flagship shows that are meant to have broad appeal, that are part of a franchise, that they don't have Marvel, they don't have DC, that they aren't some huge mega franchise like even The Crown or Stranger Things. They haven't really been replacing their flagships. They've just been diversifying, while at the same time nickel and diming and taking over much of the industry. So has Netflix peaked with Stranger Things? I don't know. They do have other projects which are actually interesting, don't get me wrong, but Fallout's from Amazon. Game of Thrones stuff is on HBO. We shall have to see. Which, of course, brings me to my quick end of this list of what are things we know that are coming after 2026? What do we know that, because by the fall I have to look up things where they go, this might be coming in fall, but is probably pushed to spring of 27. I just put those as 27. What are things that we are pretty sure are coming in 2027? Well, to start with, we know HBO Max openly said Dunk and Egg Season 2. It'll be coming out sequentially every January. And then in spring, The Last of Us Season 3. On the one hand, it was a stupid mistake to split the story like that. They should have intercut it. On the other hand, anyone who's played the game says that Abby's half of the game is more interesting. But they might have already peaked just because people might have given up on it after Season 2, and the gap between seasons is too long. Amazon has a Tomb Raider live-action series with Sophie Turner and Sigourney Weaver. Okay? And also on the video game front, I was just saying, has Netflix peaked? It might just be a slow year because then in early 2027, Netflix is having a live-action series of Assassin's Creed, the video game series. The actress who plays Tenceli in Duncan Egg has been cast in the Assassin's Creed TV show. So maybe we're being too hard on Netflix that they'll have, just a relatively slow summer and fall followed by an amazing spring. They do tend to put out heavy hitters in spring because of the Emmy cycle. Other things confirmed after the early part of the year, summer of 27. Apple's Severance Season 3. That it doesn't look like it'll be done by, the first two are in winter season, it's not even going to be done by spring. At the rate they're going, it will be out in summer. Which is good for us, because that's an off year for House of the Dragon. It won't be competing against Season 3 or Season 4, where last season competed heavily against Severance. And the first season, that opening lines that they said when they won the Golden Globe. When Sapochnik got up to the podium, he said, "I didn't prepare a speech because I thought Severance Season 1 was going to win." No, we will never be against Severance again. Fall of 27, probably Alien Earth Season 2. It has been renewed. Another big hit, which, exception here, it's actually a Paramount thing, Avatar 7 Havens. The next Avatar The Last Airbender show, it's animated. It'll be the third show in the series. It is now skipping to the next generation after Korra somehow destroyed the world, reducing it to a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and her reincarnation, Pavi, is now running around with Pavi's twin and stuff and doing all this. The previews look really intriguing. And just, it's such a mega franchise that on a scale of years we've been waiting for Seven Havens. Mark my words, that will get a lot of attention in late 27. But animation takes time. And very loosely, what are other things we know are being considered, maybe not even greenlit, by studio beyond 27? Well, at HBO Max, we know that they've greenlit Duncan Egg 3 and House of the Dragon 4, and then they're going to figure out what to do after that with the phases and everything, because it'll be phase 2 by then. But for the foreseeable future, they're greenlit. The awards hit White Lotus, which just clears up at the awards. 4 people nominated in the same supporting actor category. They have to be rules against that, but White Lotus probably won't return with season 4 until 2028. We've heard they're just starting to do it now, so maybe early 28, like right before. I think that'll be the spring of 28 show between Duncan Egg and House of the Dragon. But consider there was a 3-year gap between seasons 2 and 3. That's what I'm basing that on. DC Comics, like I said, is intending to have 2 live-action shows per year, as well as 2 animated shows. I'm looking forward to Creature Commandos coming back. We'll see what happens, but we're going to have future Marvel projects, even though they're not announced yet. We're going to have future DC Comics projects, just even if we don't know what they are. Also, just recently, HBO said that they actually want to make a V for Vendetta TV series. I think they mean an adaptation of the graphic novel, not like another thing set, and it's not as expansive as like Watchmen was, but I am a massive fan of the 2005 movie, and I know it's not exactly like the graphic novel. It had to condense things for a movie, but by that, by now, it's 20 years after that movie came out. It's a cult classic, but 20 years is a decent time to wait to make a new adaptation, and it's still timely, and if nothing else, it brings people back to the timeless graphic novel, the utter classic by Alan Moore and Lloyd, and the realistic inking and drawing of everything. So I'll lump that in with DC Comics, because technically V for Vendetta was a part of a Vertigo imprint at the time, but comics things from DC, let's just lump it in there. We don't know much beyond that because, the merger and stuff may be happening, may not be happening, but 2 years out from now, it's hard for me to predict what they're going to do next. Disney and Disney's Hulu. Like I said, I don't know what's coming with Star Wars or with Marvel, but then again, after Avengers Doomsday coming on Christmas, I think we'll know more. They'll announce other things. Oh, that was another thing, thinking of HBO, and again, the movie front, I'm not really covering movies here. They pushed Avengers Doomsday from summer to Christmas because of labor complaints that you can't. Everything finally came to a head. I've made videos on this, that you've overworked your VFX companies to the breaking point. This is unrealistic to expect this much work this fast. The infrastructure just isn't there. It was the right thing to delay it. They put it on the exact same day that Dune Part 3 is scheduled to come out, which is just to screw you with them. And then Warner should change the day that Dune comes out. Don't put big movies opposite each other like that. Then again, it's a Christmas break, so it might not really matter. And I mean, they are different crowds. One's a PG-13 movie, one's an R-rated movie. Well, no, PG-13 with, let's be honest, pushing the R rating if they actually get the axolotl tanks. But anyway, we don't know much about what Disney and with Star Wars and Marvel are doing long term, but I think we will know by early next year. We do know that they are working on more seasons of Shogun, which take like 3 years to make, and that'll be coming out early to mid 2028. On the other hand, there was only really one book that they adapted, Shogun. It's been adapted before in the 70s with famous miniseries. And I think because it's loosely based on real life, if you have a team of good writers, you could make a pleasant season 2. But without the book that it was specifically adapting, and like the romance story of season 1 is ended, I don't know how good it could be. It could still be eye-catching, it could still be good drama. I don't know if they can live up to season 1. It would still be, even if it's 70% as good as season 1, it would be very worthwhile television. But that's the other big thing, that Hulu's next big thing for Disney is Shogun 2. Other not Star Wars or Marvel things, I'm looking through their list of potential things that could be greenlit. There is potentially a live-action Gargoyle series from the classic Keith David voiced animated series from the 90s. Who knows if they'll actually make that or not. I think it would work, but with Xanatos and everything, that's maybe they could get the next gen cast to come in cameos because so many voices are from there, but we'll see if that happens. Netflix infamously doesn't announce finished projects until relatively late, and they consider a lot of things but don't actually pick them up. Just going through their list of potential in development shows that they've acquired the rights for but haven't greenlit. They did buy the rights to Something is Killing the Children, the new big hit comic series, Something is Killing the Children. And I went to panels for that at Comic-Con when I went just now, and it is pretty popular. They bought the rights in 2023, but I anticipate that Disney's Buffy reboot coming at the end of this year will encourage them to follow the leader. That'll spur them to actually greenlight Something is Killing the Children, because it is clearly and openly made by people who were fans of and grew up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that might be coming in like 2 or 3 years. Keep an eye on that. As a giant fan of the video game, I'm really hoping that someday Netflix gets its act together and makes a BioShock TV movie. They said it would be a movie, not a TV series, but there actually was some recent positive development on that they mentioned like in October or November. So never say never, just they say it's going better than it used to, because it is impossible to film some, like the obscure Expedition 33. Like, how would you make that on a TV budget, not in animation but in live action? It's silly. So I don't know how much of BioShock you'd actually need to build, and I'd be interested in it. A lot of the backgrounds would be CGI, of course, but I don't know how they could do it, but if they do, it would be a masterpiece. The one other big animation thing they are doing is they said Arcane ended, but there will be spin-offs. That this is the end of this story. We're going to make other spin-offs in the world of League of Legends. I don't know how fast that's coming, but they said other things in the League of Legends animated universe, because it was a mega hit, we will be making, and I look forward to it. One other thing, Netflix actually optioned the rights to a cartoon adaptation of Crash Bandicoot. The Crash Bandicoot video games, they got the cartoon rights, and for all I know, it'll be just like the Super Mario movies that are coming out now. Not anything big, but that's another noteworthy thing. The big thing I'm looking forward to is like BioShock or something like that. Amazon Prime, though, long term, that is where we are really excited. Well, HBO can't say what they're doing beyond 2 years, neither can Disney. I don't blame them for that. Amazon just bought up a lot of rights and made a lot of announcements of these are long-term things we're considering. A Mass Effect live action TV series. No, they just hired a showrunner. This is really happening. They hired a showrunner in June of 25 and say it'll be out in 28 at the earliest. Again, how can you do something on that scale? I don't know. We'll see what they're doing. But no, they actually, unlike Netflix, which is moving away from video games or particularly from animation, Amazon is really embracing animation, adapting animation, and adapting video games. Because I already said they bought it. Well, Netflix does have Assassin's Creed they're going to do, but next year they're going to have Tomb Raider. They're going to, after that, at some point, have Mass Effect, a live action Wolfenstein series. And then some other, these are book adaptations or other things, not video games. Ian Banks' Culture series, this giant space opera. It'll be the next Expanse, except this is far future nanotext. I did just wow that they actually bought the rights to that. A She-Ra live action TV show. I don't know if that ties in with the Masters of the Universe live action with Jared Leto as Skeletor that they were considering, but that's coming out in summer. A Pacific Rim prequel, actually covering the Kaiju War, and let's forget the second movie, I hope, but I'm excited for that. Animation, real animation, like Hazbin Hotel, Rebecca Sugar for a Steven Universe spin-off, stealing her away from Cartoon Network at Warner. And the one I look forward to most of all, if they do it right, Warhammer 40k as an ongoing franchise that Henry Cavill really wants to get made. That just in terms of the scale of that and the storyverse, how much they can play with it, that will be amazing. Another thing that is not tied to any one specific platform, though, in case you were wondering, I'll wrap up with this, is there's been a recent surge in romantasy books for mostly female audiences since the pandemic and economic collapse and just its escapism. So there's been this big surge in romantasy, particularly in the late 2010s, and it grew since then. Disney's Hulu did option the rights for A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the first big heavy hitter in that. But if you haven't been keeping up with this, that completely fell through. Disney Hulu wanted to make A Court of Thorns and Roses, but it stalled and the rights have fully relapsed back to the author, who is now shopping around to other major platforms. So they want to make a show of that. It might see the light of day, it might not. Another one of the top romantasy series, Fourth Wing, was recently optioned by Amazon. That does not mean Amazon has greenlit it any more than Disney greenlit A Court of Thorns and Roses, just that they're considering it. And there are various other series they may or may not do to get in on that. So, as far as I know, these are all of the big potential series looking ahead. And when you're dealing with a huge flagship project on the scale of The Witcher, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones things, Warhammer, Mass Effect, they're big enough and enough work goes into them that you can hear about them years in advance. Case in point, Alien Earth. I heard about that 2 years ago. And on a certain level, I'm kind of worried that I haven't heard of that many big shows coming in 2027. You have really big new flagships to replace the ones ending, particularly at Netflix. So, please tell me in the comments, can you think of other big things that you think will be particularly noteworthy for the sci-fi, fantasy, or just TV in general fandom? Things that fuel YouTube videos for the foreseeable future. And again, part of this is, well, I expect that like next spring, there's going to be big announcements about the next phases for Star Wars and Marvel. Until then, though, I'm not really sure. And someone asked me this again, I'm not covering movies. Yes, Greta Gerwig is starting a new adaptation of all of the Narnia stories, but as movies, not as TV shows. Then again, they're only giving them a 1-month limited release because it's Netflix. They're going to put it out, Magician's Nephew, over Thanksgiving, and then a month later put it out on TV at Christmas. And like I said, I consider Christmas the start of 2027. So, and it's a TV movie, not a TV show, so I'm going to cover that next year. That's far enough away that I can't really have an opinion on it yet. So please just tell me in the comments. I've tried, because I've seen some really bad attempted predictions as what's going to be big this year. Tell me of anything else. But then again, some of the best shows I've ever seen were complete surprises that I hadn't even heard the name of these things until suddenly they came out. So we're focused on rebuilding the Game of Thrones franchise with not one but two shows after an 18-month gap. But you can't live on that alone. There has to be other stuff to keep us occupied. There's going to be a ton of stuff between Dunk and Egg and House of the Dragon for YouTube channels to talk about in spring. So hopefully we don't go into hibernation mode again, that like people who like Dunk and Egg will go to talk about The Boys and then go back to talking about House of the Dragon rather than their YouTube channels drying up. This keeps the infrastructure alive. And then after House of the Dragon, which is really the only big summer show I can think of, Star Wars Ahsoka. And then 3 different big shows, pick which one you want to follow later in fall, like Neuromancer or Vision Quest. And we will know more about fall the closer we get to it. There might be more shows being announced that we just haven't heard about yet. So please like and subscribe. This will be the year we rebuild.